The killing of police officers is on the rise again in the country. Police say the latest statistics point to a steep increase for this year. 34 police officers died in the line of duty in the last financial year, up from 33 in the previous year. The fallen heroes were honoured during the annual official Police Commemoration Day at the Union Buildings in Pretoria earlier today. President Cyril Ramaphosa also joined the families of police officers and reservists who lost their lives in the line of duty. Dr. Chris de Kok is an independent crime analyst who conducts and tracks studies on the risk profile of SAPS members, circumstances of the killings on and off duty, and of course the motive of cop killers. Very good evening to you, Dr. de Kok. Thank you so much for speaking to us. So perhaps let's just first start with the number of police officers that have died so far. We've given up until now, but because we get quarterly crime statistics, I understand that also one has to be formulaic in understanding and contextualizing those figures.
Good evening, and good evening to all the viewers. I've heard that figures that you now refer to, and I even saw on news items earlier this evening, the figures that was mentioned at this morning's memorial. I differ a bit, because if we look at last year, the year that ended, let's say the year 22-23, that year, 90 police officers were killed. In the year before that, in 21-22, 109 officers were killed. So in that 2 years, if we compare those 2 years, the previous 2 financial years, there was a small decrease, a very small decrease. The numbers are still far too high. But then I must say, in the first quarter of this financial year, which is now the 23-24 year, there was quite a steep increase. It went from 18 in last year, the first quarter, to 31, which is nearly a doubling of police officers which got killed. So I can see that there is a spike. Now, the killing of police officers in South Africa is much, much higher than many countries. It's actually a quite shocking figures, and it indicates the violence of our crime and the violence of the people that is committing crime in South Africa, and that they will stop at nothing. I mean, we had a very good example just before this memorial service of this morning. We had a fantastic example of that on Friday in Louis Trichardt, when police officers, the Hawks, the task team of the Hawks, went to arrest people's CIT robbers, and then the robbers just start to fire on the police, and the police had no other choice than to shoot them. And it was a little mini war for more than an hour, and the end result of that is 19 robbers killed. One only discovered today. Well, not all of them robbers. 1 or 2 people were not part of the group, like the domestic servant there. But also, if we see the violence which they react in.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to ask you, Dr. de Kok. What we saw there, that incident in Louis Trichardt, is it emblematic of the types of crimes that police are now having to deal with? Because we understand these suspects were believed to be involved in cash and transit heists in other provinces as well.
Yeah, you see, when we talk cash and transit heists, people think of a fixed syndicate, a syndicate that sort of are connected to each other, and they stay as a group. It doesn't work like that. A CIT robbery is planned up to 6 months in advance. The planners will then identify people which they will draw into this next incident of CIT robbery. And so they select certain people who have a knowledge of explosives, people who have knowledge how to drive a car, all of those things. And they put a group together And that they do only a few days before the real robbery. And that is why the police had to strike in this moment before the CIT robbery could occur.
And
these people are armed with very, very heavy firearms, AK-47s, R1s and R4s.
And that's another point I wanted to bring it to. Last year, 10 suspects died during a cash and transit shootout with police officers after the would-be robbers actually fired at a police helicopter and wounded one of the pilots. So are the criminals getting their hands on sophisticated arms and ammunition as well?
Well, definitely. Not only in CIT robberies, many other crimes. If we look at, for example, the Zamazamas as an example, these people are very heavily armed, and they also booby-trap the mines. So it is. This is the kind of people that have to be policed, and that is why we have this high figures of police officers killed. I must also say we have to know that police officers are not always killed in the line of duty. Actually, if you look at the figures that is released, what it was released during the last many quarters, the off-duty police officers are killed more than the on-duty police officers. But again, also when the police officer are in a shopping center, suddenly there's a robbery, and the police officer put himself on duty as a police officer and he didn't get shot. Or police officers are also hijacked. Police officers are also the victims of house robberies.
I mean, we've been told that a part of the reasons that police officers themselves are at risk is because they know their occupation and that they know that they are armed or they carry a firearm on them or within the house. So the risk profile of police, is it mainly because, are they targeted because of things like that? Or as you say, some of them are killed off duty? Are they singled out because they're working on important cases? What increases the risk?
Well, it's a mixed bag. Some officers are killed, like in the incident on Friday in Louis Trichardt, when they go to arrest this group, and then they get killed. I mean, no police officer were killed in that specific case, but one was very heavily wounded. Actually, they had to amputate the leg below the knee, and he nearly died. And that is one scenario. Another scenario, a few weeks ago on a Sunday evening, like this evening, a Hawks officer, Lieutenant Colonel, was shot execution style at the toll plaza near Hammanskraal, at the Hammanskraal toll plaza. Now, that case is because he investigated a very sensitive matter, and he was taken out because he knew too much. I mean, we had many of those incidents in Cape Town, the very well-known incidents where police officers were shot because they were investigating gangs. And then you have the situation where a police officer is not shot because he's a police officer. He's just at the wrong place at the wrong time. And because he's a police officer, he placed himself on duty, now become involved of a shootout, and then he gets killed or she gets killed. A very good other example is last week, the week before last, two officers, a woman sergeant and a male constable, was shot when they tried to sort out a problem at the shopping center in Kimberley. And this guy, which is, it seems, emotionally unstable, took out his firearm and he shot the police, the female sergeant and the male constable. And in this case, maybe they were not ready for this. They thought they are just handling this situation, and they were not prepared that this guy will take out the gun and shoot them.
And just finally, the sophistication of their operations. I understand the police commissioner, Masemula, at some point that in one case that suspects plan to use an ambulance to transport money to Gauteng province. Are the crimes becoming more sophisticated, and is it because also they are using inside people to carry them out? Because the criminal intelligence unit has often been questioned as lacking capacity or at least foresight.
Well, let me start in this specific case, because it seems you again referred to Pretoria, where ambulance were also found, which they would have transported the money. The first thing I want to say about this is I think here we have an excellent example where the police intelligence was quite good. I mean, they had the intelligence before this case occurred. And that is that, you know, it is that thing where police have intelligence when we come to a highly organized crime like CITs, which is a highly organized crime, that if they can have intelligence, they can prevent CIT robberies of happening. And this actually was done in the late, the first decade of 2000, up to 2010. In that period, actually lots of CITs were prevented. Actually, and at about 2010, we had no CITs in this country. And then suddenly from 2012, it went back to where it was at the late 90s. This just shows you that intelligence is actually the answer to this kind of crime. And this example of Louis Trichardt is actually a very good example. About CITs becoming more sophisticated, look, they are actually a very sophisticated crime for many, many years. Highly organized, 6 months of planning in these kind of heists. And in this case, they wanted to go for a depot, a money depot in Limpopo. And clearly, the planning was done beforehand. It would have been successful if the police didn't foil this
Final
situation.
question, Dr. de Kok, the presence of the use of illegal foreign nationals, some of whom we know have military training as well. How much of a factor is it, particularly with Limpopo having close proximity with the borders, where people are able to take advantage of lack of detection? And is this a national picture as well?
Look, in this case, it seems that there was foreign involvement, at least Zimbabwean involvement. We know that when it comes to, for example, another kind of crime like the Zamazamas, most of it is foreign involvement, Lesotho, Mozambique, and Zimbabwe. But when there was a study done, a very good study, an excellent study by Mr. Crawford, Henny Crawford at UNISA, on CIT robberies. It was actually his doctorate, and then later it became a book. And in that specific case, actually he interviewed CIT robbers in the jail, in the prison, and unfortunately, actually there were only 2 foreigners. Most of these were South Africans. Now I would like to know these 18 or 19 people who got shot, how many, and the active ones, not the one that was shot by accident, if I can put it like that, like the domestic worker. But I would have liked to know how many of them were South Africans. It seems some of them came from the Eastern Cape, some of them came from KwaZulu-Natal, which showed that it is maybe most of this group was actually South Africans.
Thank you so much for your time and sharing your insights. So much appreciated. Independent crime analyst, Dr. Chris de Kok.